Hi everyone, welcome back to Book Talk Tuesdays. This is our video series about brand new books for kids ages 8 to 12. And I'm Miss Jessica. I'm one of the youth and teen librarians at the Chelsea District Library. And I have a special guest here with me today who is another coworker from the library.
Hi, I'm Stacey Comfort. I am the teen librarian over at Chelsea District Library.
And I asked Stacey to be my guest today because our theme is horror books, scary books. And I am a big scaredy cat. I don't like reading scary books. This was a really, really hard episode to get ready for and read these books for. But Stacey is not so scared of things like this. So I thought she would be a good one to help me out. So we're going to talk about our books in order from least scary to scariest. So if you are super into scary horror books, just wait till the end. We have some really, really terrifying books for you. But I'm going to start with Battle of the Bad Breath Bats. It's from a new chapter book series, a beginner chapter book series called 13th Street. So this was the least scary of the books that I read. And it's about three cousins. Their names are Malia, Ivan, and Dante, and they're staying at their aunt's house for the summer. And their aunt tells them how to walk to the community pool one day. So they get all loaded up with their pool gear, and they're following her instructions. Malia's the oldest, and so she's making sure her cousins stay, follow the rules and stay on the path. And they encounter this old woman. She's a little bit creepy. She just starts talking to them out of nowhere. And she tells them to take a shortcut. So they follow her directions. They cut down the alley behind the bakery on their way to 13th Street. And they get to 13th Street and look around, and they realize this is bad news. It starts thunderstorming out of nowhere. And they walk up and down the road trying to get back on the right path, look for something familiar. And there's no other roads off of 13th Street. They cannot go back. And then out of nowhere, these super smelly bats start flying in. Their breath stinks. They just are stinky bats. They manage to get into a building where they're safe for a minute, and they turn around and there's a ghost there. So I'm not gonna tell you any more than that. I will say though that even though I'm a scaredy cat, this book was the just right level of scary. I will let you know by the end of the book, everyone is safe and sound, so you don't have to worry about that. But there are some pretty suspenseful parts, and I had to make sure that I read it during the daytime while I pet my cat. So I think it's a great book. It's a great series, actually, since it's the first of a new series. For, I would say, kids in second grade who are starting chapter books, you're really going to enjoy this one for sure.
My first one is The Puppet's Payback by Mary Downing Hahn. Super scary cover there with the creepy puppets and dummies and dolls are always really creepy for me.
Yeah.
So in this book there are 10 short stories, including one about the puppet in the title. And Mary Downing Hahn has been writing scary stories for like 40 years. When Miss Jessica and I were little kids, she was writing really scary books.
Yes, and I will say, when I was in 4th, 5th grade, I read all of her books, and I was totally not scared by them. So this whole scaredy cat thing has developed over time.
So there's 10 short stories, which makes it not that scary because you can just kind of read them one at a time and kind of take a break, like Miss Jessica said, pet your cat a little or your dog, The scariest one is definitely about the puppet because it is about a puppet that gets stuck to your hand and you can't get it off.
Ooh.
Yeah. So there are, most of them though are like ghost stories, little children in graveyards and stuff like that. But there's also one about a sea serpent, and then there's a couple with vampires and witches. So it's kind of sort of spooky. Like I said, it helps that they're short stories and you can kind of just read them at your own pace.
That sounds not too bad. I think I could probably handle a couple stories from that collection for sure. So my next book is not as scary as I thought it was going to be when I started reading it. It's another new series. Disney has a new series out called Disney Chills, and each book is based on a different Disney villain. So you're probably familiar with the bad guy in all of these books already. And the first one is called Part of Your Nightmare, and it's based on Ursula. She's the villain in this story. And it's about a girl named Shelley Anderson. And her parents own the aquarium in their town. And they have recently gotten divorced. So she and her mom have moved out of their big house and they're living in a smaller house on the other side of town, which means she has to go to a new school now. And she's working really hard to make new friends. She had to join a new swim team, so she's been working to become a better swimmer too. And she picks up this nautilus shell out of her brother's room one day, and she makes a wish. And this was not a great choice because she ends up striking a deal with Ursula the Sea Witch to be the fastest swimmer. Unfortunately, as it often goes in wish fulfillment books, she does not get specific enough. And she starts sprouting gills, and all of her new friends that she's worked so hard to make are getting mad at her because she didn't, wish to be fast enough to beat the other team. She just wished to be the fastest swimmer. So now she's beating all of her new friends too, even at races that she's not usually in. And things are just really going downhill. I don't want to give too much away. I was surprised a little bit by this book because it's not really a scary book for most of it. It's really a friendship book and about a girl who's trying to kind of find herself after a really, really tough year. It does get pretty scary at the end. She and her friends break into buildings on a college campus, and it's dark and it's nighttime and they're trying to figure out how to break this curse. So it does get pretty scary towards the end. And I will leave it at that.
So my second one is The Ghost Hunter's Daughter by Dan Poblacki. And he's kind of the Mary Downing Hahn of now. Like, he's the one that you always ask for when you want something really scary. And he did The Nightmares and The Haunting of Gabriel Ash. Those ones were big a couple of years ago. So in this book, there's a girl named Claire, and her dad is Miles Holliday, who is the host of a ghost hunting TV show called Invisible Intelligence. And his job is to go out into scary haunted places and try and talk to people about how they're haunted. So there are actually some parts in the book that are like scripts from the TV show, which is kind of cool.
That is kind of cool.
Yeah. There's also a guy in the book called Lucas, who is Claire's age, and he lives with his grandmother, who everyone in town thinks is a witch or a psychic or creepy. And it turns out she actually is. She can talk to ghosts. And unfortunately, Lucas finds out that he can too.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's a long history going back to like great-grands and great-grands. And the scariest thing is that you have to answer when the ghost calls. And the ghost calls by knocking. So whenever there's a knock on the door, Grandma and Lucas look at each other and go, "Were you expecting someone?" And then they answer the door and there's something creepy there. The problem is that one of the first ghosts that Lucas sees is Claire's mom, who says that her dad is in really big trouble somewhere upstate where he was recording a video TV show. So he and Claire go up to the town called Hush Falls Holler and go and try and find her dad and save him from whatever terrible creepy thing is there.
That sounds pretty scary. I don't know if I could read that one. I would have to have like full daylight, I think. So my next book, this is the scariest one. It took me a long time to read this because I had to stop and start a lot. It starts out a little bit similar to yours, actually. There's a parent who's a ghost hunter, and mine too. It's called Whispering Pines by Heidi Lang and Katie Bartkowski. And the two authors have actually written a series of books that's much sweeter and a little bit more gentle than this particular book. This is very different from their fantasy series about baking. And it starts out with a prologue of some kids playing hide and seek inside their house. Their rules for hide and seek say that they can go out into the yard, but not into the forest beyond the yard. Well, guess what? Somebody goes into the forest beyond the yard. They all end up being chased down by this terrible monster that steals their eyes. It was so scary. It was terrifying right from the very beginning. Okay. Then after you get past the prologue, then you jump into the real action of the story and you meet Caden, who has lived in Whispering Pines his whole life. His mom is a ghost hunter. She has a business that formed around that. And you also meet Ray, who is new to town. And the chapters actually alternate back and forth between their perspectives, which is kind of nice. It adds a nice element to the story for sure. Ray and her mom have just moved to town. years ago, her father just disappeared. And everyone told, the theory was that he just didn't want to be in their family anymore and he ran off because of that. But she is absolutely convinced that is not the case, that he was taken or removed somehow from their life against his will. So as more and more kids start showing up at school with missing eyeballs in this kind of zombie-like state, Carson and Ray come to realize that if they team up, they both have some pieces of knowledge that might work together to solve this mystery and save all the kids in their town. There's also some other drama going on at school, and so Ray is really distrustful. She doesn't know who she can trust, including Caden at some points. So there's a lot going on in this story. It is a truly, truly scary book. Read it during daylight. Make sure your family's around. You might not want to play hide and seek for a little while after this one.
Okay, so my scariest book is Camp Murder Face by Josh Burke and Sandra Mitchell. Josh Burke, I think, has mostly written like fun books, funny, hilarious books. This is not that. From the title, I thought, okay, it's just gonna be a little bit of silly fun. It's not silly fun. In the very beginning of the book, we get a map of Camp Sweetwater, which is the camp that they're at. There, ha. And you'll notice that under the title, it says Abyssus Abyssum Invocat, which I did some librarian magic and found out that is Latin for hell calls to hell, or one misstep leads to another. So things are going to get worse before they get better.
Not a great sign if that's on your camp map, like that's how you're advertising this camp.
Oh, yeah, no. So this book takes place in 1983, where Tez and Corin, both young teenagers, are attending Camp Sweetwater. The camp opened in 1863, then closed mysteriously in 1953. Corin's parents are getting divorced, and she's pretty sure they just sent her off to camp to get rid of her for a while so they can settle things and move out of the house, so that's not awesome. And Tez has a heart condition, which means he can't get too excited or terrible things might happen, and he just wants to be normal. And so they kind of like meet on the bus and sort of become friends, and they end up moving into cabins next to each other. And then at the first big campfire, they start seeing faces in the fire. And then there's a thing later on where there's like bloody messages on the walls. Yeah. So they work together and find out that the camp is either haunted or cursed or both, and try to figure out how to save themselves and escape because they don't want to be there with all of the creepy 19th century ghosts. The extra bonus is that they do escape camp during the day briefly, and they go do research at the local library. Good job.
Woo-hoo! That sounds scary. The whole horror genre, just not so much for me. All right, but if it is for you, you can put these books on hold by calling the library at 734-475-8732, extension 219, or you can email a librarian at ref@chelseadistrictlibrary.org, and we can help you put these books on hold and find even more horror and scary books for kids. Thanks for watching, everyone.